In this video, I'm going to teach you how to paint water. And you're probably thinking there's this glorious, amazing silver bullet of a trick that I am going to reveal right now in this video, and forevermore, you are going to paint the most amazing water the world has ever seen. And all you need is this brush and this color and this medium, and you do it like this. I'm sorry to tell you, that is not the case. How you paint water is exactly how you paint a nose, or how you paint eyelashes, or how you paint a tree, or clouds, or a sky. It's the same thing. Same principles apply. You are going to paint thin to thick, you will paint dark to light, you'll paint big to small, you'll paint back to front, all the same principles, and you basically paint what you see. I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you maybe a few tips that will help you painting water specifically. So the thing with water that is the same for things that get us shifted into our left brain, like eyeballs, eyelashes, clouds, trees, leaves, grass, those types of things, is we go, oh, grass, line, 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 line. That's our left brain. Clouds, puff, 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 puff. Nope, left brain. What else? Eyelashes, line, 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 right? That's a left brain thing. So water, if you're thinking ripple, 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 left brain. You got to get out of your left brain, and you have to move into what you already know how to do. You already really know how to paint water, and that is to follow the same principles that you would take if you were painting anything else under the sun. I'm basically going to be demonstrating that, and I do want to caution you about your left brain and not allowing that to kick in and simplify things and turn it into a symbol. So for the example of grass, your left brain tells you grass is a bunch of green lines. Okay, see how that happened? You took the idea of grass, and you went back to kindergarten when you drew grass with your crayons and you made green lines with it, and then you told yourself with your left brain, how I paint grass is with green lines. Okay, I need a small pointy brush to make green lines. And that's really not how you're going to paint grass. You would, paint the tones, the dark tones, the light tones, the mid tones, the different shapes and patterns that is forming as light hits it. Always when you're painting light. You're painting the pattern of light in highlights and shadows where there's sort of a cast shadow that the light is making. And those shapes, that's really what you're doing when you're painting, and water is really no different than anything else. So what I have here so far, I'm going to demonstrate in oil. I have a few colors on the palette, most dominantly the blues, and then a few complements. And if you're painting water, don't think water is blue, left brain, I will paint it blue. Like grass is green, I will get all my greens out and paint it green. You need yellow, you need red, you need orange, you need blue for green grass. For water, I need a lot of blue and violet and green to make up the dominant color that water is blue, but I also need to have the complement. Otherwise, it will look like a cartoon, it'll look really stylized, and it won't look natural. So you have to also use the complements. So that's why I have a few of the complements, and then a lot of variety of blue, aqua, green, those colors. So far, I have an acrylic underpainting that is basically a mixed media piece where it's collage and then modeling paste and gloss gel and then some acrylic just basically blocking in. So this is an underpainting. That's why it looks a little rough. It doesn't look, that believable yet. And now I'm going to go into oil with this and paint oil on top of this. So you can apply what I'm teaching you with acrylic. You would just probably ignore the warm and cool stuff, and you can adapt this to acrylic, or you can do this with oil, start to finish. What you would do is block in first with your oil, or maybe you'll do subtractive with your oil. So at that kind of, after you have an underpainting how do you really make it start to look like water? So that's really what I'm going to do right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is glaze. So whether you're working in acrylic or you're working in oil, a good method at this point after the underpainting and blocking in is going to be glazing. So I'm gonna basically work this area for this video. I'm not gonna have time to work everything. Maybe I'll go down into here so I can show you how I would do, you know, that type of water. And again, water is different. There's river water, there's pool water, there's that sort of glistening underwater that makes those white sparkly striations. There's deep water, there's shallow water, there's water with river rocks in it. You know, there's waves like this. There's so many types of water. So to say, this is how you do water as kind of a blanket statement, it's like saying, this is how you paint all figures. Well, sometimes you're doing a portrait, sometimes you're doing dark skin, light skin, medium skin, clothing, right? There's so many varieties within figure, just like water. You're always going to do well if you get out of your left brain, you get into your right brain, and you think about the principles of creating and painting in oil or acrylic even, and that's going to be thin to thick, so glazes go in the beginning. You build up your layers, you work back to front, big to small. Those save details and highlights for last. That is the method, no matter what you're painting, you're gonna use. So in this particular case, I'm painting waves, sort of abstract waves, and then, you know, foamy water right here. Let's get started. So I'm gonna begin glazing with the cool. Because this is back a bit, it's in the background, and only place I'm gonna use warm is on the foamy, the top parts of the foamy stuff. Maybe a little bit in here, but mostly all of this that the white part of the wave is on top of is gonna be warm. So I'm using manganese, which is a transparent, and I'm just going to add a glaze here, mixing Galkid into it. And it's just kind of like a way to get a little bit of a base down. And it's already made it juicier. That's what I love about oil. Juicy, juicy. Now, when you're glazing, you can already kind of get the feel of water by making these sort of horizontal striations instead of dab, 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 right? That doesn't work. So I'm kind of mimicking the horizontalness of this water by going side to side with it. Okay, now I'm gonna add a little bit of, I don't know, some greeny glaze in there. So I'm adding some green. I'm gonna put that where it's a little bit more aqua, just to add some variety. And then I'm going to add a little bit of violet in there so that we also have some variety. Okay, and while I'm glazing, I'm going to, now these are opaque, so I gotta really thin these out a lot to get a glaze down. It's better with transparent. And I'm gonna brown it out with some violet. So I just basically mixed yellow and violet and a little bit of orange to try to make this greenish brown color. And I'm holding up my brush to it just to see if I'm close, because it's kind of this mustardy yellow green. And it's pretty close. I'm pretty happy with that by mixing basically violet and the yellow. So this is where you're not going to use your left brain, because it's sort of counterintuitive to think that water is yellow or has some shade of yellow, but it really honestly does here and there. So wherever I see some yellow, I'm gonna put that a little bit. And I see some yellow in here, maybe add a little more orange, kind of, oops, brown it up a little bit. I'm glazing the darks in this frothy, foamy stuff. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of purple in there just to get it a tad darker. And so adding the complements of just that little touch of yellow and orange is really gonna make this work. And it takes time to really train your eye to see all these colors, where I'm calling basically a gray yellow, but it really is, you know, if you really look, it is yellow and purple, etc. Okay, so I think I'm done with glazing for now. Now it's time for opaques. I want to start sort of back to front, and I'm gonna go dark to light now that my glazes are in. So I'm not gonna just go right for the highlights. I gotta get those midtones. So if you look right in here, there's a whole world going on. And if I wanted to go into hyper realism mode, and I really wanted to exactly paint every little nuance of a shape in there, I could do that. I could get this little tiny brush and I could go in there and paint every single shape I see in there. This spot alone would probably take me, you know, an hour to paint. And I don't know about you, but that's not my temperament. It's not like what I really want to do with my life. So I'm going to look at it, and this is a hard thing. I think this is something that takes a little bit of experience, knowing how to lay down a brush stroke, knowing what is going to happen, how much you load up that brush with paint, and how are you going to actually do that. I'm going to try to mimic the pattern of light and shadow that I see in there without necessarily getting it 100% accurate where this shape is right there. It's just, it feels like what this looks like. So let's see if I can pull this off. So it's pretty gray back there, and right now I have it very blue. So how do I get something that is very blue? If you compare this to this, they don't look the same, right? I need to get this grayer than it is already. And I gotta save my aquas for in here. So how do you gray up a blue? Well, that's where my complements come in. So that's where I'm gonna use orange and a little bit of this violet to kind of get this brown going. And then I will use blue until I have it pretty gray. Okay, so I'm gonna mix a little bit of this white into that gray. And as you can see on this palette, I have this really beautiful gray. Here is a bonus tip for you. Do not mix black and white into the same color. Just don't do it. Either you are, the only way I ever use black, okay, is to take a transparent color. If you use an opaque color, it already has white in it, so don't do that. So a transparent color, and you can throw some black into it, and that will darken it. So if you need a dark that's darker than you know, Prussian blue and alizarin mixed together, then you can throw a little black into it. That's when I use black, to really get a deep, dark, rich black. Otherwise, I don't really use black. It just kind of sits on my palette. So if you want to make gray, you mix complements and then throw white into it like I did. Don't ever mix black and white together. You don't want to mix a tint and a shade together. What that will do is make a really sort of flat, dead, kind of muddy looking, ugly color. And if you mix complements to make a gray, it's gonna look outstanding. So I'm gonna mix up a little bit of a darker gray because I made that a little too light. And then you can kind of see how I'm doing it again. So I have a complement. Now that came out green, right? So what do? Well, we would throw some red in there, but I didn't put red on my palette. So I'm gonna throw purple in there. Now that I threw purple in there, it's more gray. So a little bit of white, but not too much, so I don't mess it up like last time. There we go. And now I have a really nice kind of steel blue gray for in here. And so I'm just mimicking those shapes that I see and kind of getting it real scumbly and using my brush to kind of get those shapes that I'm seeing in my source in there, and using a little bit of the already existing texture and kind of scraping around to get it just right. And I would say that's probably the hardest part of this whole thing, because it takes experience and time behind the paintbrush to know what brushes are going to do. If you touch lightly, you touch dark, you know, hard, what's going to happen? So I needed a little more paint and a little bit lighter of a value there. And you can also do this in layers. You know, you don't have to do it all a prima like I'm doing. So you can go through and do all your darker ones and then, you know, come in and do lighter. So as you can see, that background section here has the right colors. It feels a lot more like this section. And now I'm gonna go for that aqua part in there, this part in here, and then the foam. And then you'll have a pretty good idea how I went about it. Okay, so now I'm gonna key up my colors a little bit more. And I think I'm gonna switch brushes to this smaller filbert for this area. Why? I don't know. I think because the stripe is smaller. That's why I want to do that. See, this area that I'm painting is smaller than that one. So I need a little bit smaller of a brush. And if you don't know if you have the right value or color, you can just kind of hold it up to see. And I can see that I need to make it greener. We'll start with that and see how we like it. I want it a little more intense. Intense! Ooh, that's right. See that? That's better. Intense was better. Look at that. That looks just like water. Now I'm off to this white. Well, it's not really white. It's, you know, aqua mixed with white. So I'm gonna lighten this up. Very similar color. Now I'm kind of landing some paint there, as you can see. I'm loading it up right there because I'm gonna pull it down and going across. So this is a trick if you're doing a waterfall, I guess there are some tricks to water, right? So, but this would work for anything that you're trying to make kind of a gradation from like a base of a highlight that you want to kind of fade. So now I'm going to get some paint off my brush and almost have no paint on my brush. And if you look close in the detail, I'm going for this aqua color right here that's lighter in value at the break of it, and the contrast between this and up here is higher, and then it sort of fades, right? So what I'm going to do is pull that down. Okay, now underneath it, it's a bit darker and more intense. Okay, and then as you can see in the source, there's a little bit of pink in there, right? Which is gonna really help it look natural once all this is done. But if I did it now, this is another thing that experience will tell you, if I were to put that pink in right now, what would happen? Mud would happen. So I'm gonna hold my horses. I'm not going to put the pink right now, and I'm gonna wait for this to dry, right? But it's gotta dry overnight. And then I will come in and add that pink. Now back in here, I have a little bit too sharp of a contrast. So what I can do there is, I'm not doing blendy, right? I got lots of brush strokes. The brush strokes are what's gonna make this. But right there, I might just have to soften that edge, blend that edge just a little bit so that we kind of don't have it quite as contrasty, right? Okay, so let's do some foam now. And just like that water part, I'm going to work dark to light. So I already have the darks in there. I'm not gonna go for the highlights right away. that would be sort of silly, because you have to stack your highlights on top of the darks and the midtones, because the highlights are what is closest to us. So I'm also saving warm paint for that. So I am looking for the midtones that are kind of in through here, and then I'll go to the lighter midtones, and then finally the highlights last. I'm gonna stick with cool for now. So cool paint, that'll recede some. And I'm gonna, put a gray. So it's gonna be a yellow and violet complement. I don't wanna do blue and orange because that's for back there. So this is a nice mid-tone, as you can see. And again, I have to mimic that splash sort of texture. And that's why I put modeling paste texture on here, because it feels like water. It's the same texture that the water's having. And I'm just using the side of the brush. I'm very gently sort of adding a little bit of paint dry brushed on there. And it's mixing with the glaze, so I'm getting good color variety in there. But I think I'm gonna change it up a little bit and go a tad towards green, just to have some variety. And I'm gonna lighten it up also a little bit and get some of the purple in there so it's still gray. And I'm also letting the acrylic that's underneath where I like it. See, I like the acrylic that's in there, so I'm leaving that. I'm not messing around with that. So that's where an acrylic underpainting can really help you out. You don't have to completely cover your underpainting. Okay, so I have now switched to the warm, and I'm gonna start doing the highlights. And again, I'm trying to mimic that texture, that kind of spackly, foamy texture. And I'm also simultaneously looking at the overall shape that's there in that little cloud puff thing. And the good thing about waves or clouds is it's very forgiving, because nobody knows what these look like but you. So as long as you get it close, that's all that matters. And the reason I'm doing it warm is because it's in front of and on top of what's underneath it. Okay, so now the brightest highlights. And this is where I'm probably gonna switch down to this little itty bitty brush. I'm just throwing a tint of a warm color into it so it'll flip warm. So a little yellow ochre, a little pink. And now I'm looking, where are the brightest lights? You want to avoid using straight out of the tube white with nothing in it. You want to avoid that. It's like you can spot it a mile away and it doesn't look too sophisticated, too natural. You really need to throw something into it. And you can just kind of get lost in this little world of splash here. And once you get the pattern down and what it's supposed to look like, you can really kind of go off on your own. You don't want to oversimplify the shapes. You don't want to, have it too far from, completely make it up. It really does need to look, natural. Okay, so this gives you a real good idea of how to go about this type of water. I, of course, would kind of finesse this a lot more. This hasn't really been painted. I would hit the bottom. I would come back the next day after this is dried and, add the pink back in. This wave back here needs to be added. So this isn't done, but it's on the way. It's on the way to being done. I think you see the method and it kind of coming to life and looking more and more like a splashy wave. I do want to address this part of the water because this is where that foamy sea is. And a lot of this color and texture is really right on. Even the shape is pretty good. So I think all I really need to do is add that white in. Again, left brain's not turned on, and I'm not, gonna paint it white. Because if you really, really look at this and you compare this color to, a really bright white color, it's not that white. It's just comparatively that way. And I'm gonna do this cool, and as we come forward, I'll warm it up. So back here in Cool Land, a little bit more yellow, orange for that. Mixing the right color, the right value. If you're not sure, you just kind of hold it up and squint. And it looks a little bright. Like I think I did it even too light. So let's darken it a little bit. That looks a lot closer. So I'm starting back here. Okay, now I'm gonna lighten it up a little bit because it's lighter as it's coming forward. And all these little choices do matter. You don't wanna get lazy and just put the same color everywhere, the same value everywhere, and symbolize it as water. All these little, they don't take that long. I mean, I haven't been working on this more than what, 20, 25 minutes? And I'm a good bit of the way through. It's just these details do matter. It's what's gonna make your painting look really, really stunning and believable. So don't shortchange it. Okay, now here I'm gonna warm it up again because we're coming forward, and I'm gonna really get the highlights in there stronger. Okay, so that's nearly done. I'm just gonna go in with this smaller brush and just basically with kind of stacking up the brush strokes, this smaller, more detailed brush, I'm just gonna hit a few highlight points. Okay, so that's all I'm gonna demonstrate in this video, because to really finish this out in fullness, it would take me a really long time, and this would be a really long video. So I think that this gives you a good direction, a good method on how to paint water. Honestly, it's really like how you would paint anything else. The same principles apply. And let's just review some do's and don'ts. The things that you don't want to do is be in your left brain and think water is blue, paint the whole thing blue, and make ripples or lines that are waves or anything like that. That is a left brain response to water. You want to look at your source. You really want to look at what is actually there and what are the real colors that are actually there. From far away, this looks like an aqua blue ocean, and from far away, this will look like an aqua blue ocean. However, if you noticed, I didn't use a ton of blue. I used a lot of greens and browns and purples and grays, even yellow, to make this up. So what do you want to do? You want to make sure you use your complements. As you can see, I've mixed complements into most of these colors. And you also want to be in your right brain and look at the actual shapes that are there, that the light is forming, and the shadows it's casting. You want to use your brush in different ways, trying the sides, scumbling, kind of circular motions, using lots of different brushes. In this very short period of time, I already used 3 brushes. I used a pretty big one, and then a medium one, and then a small one. You want to stack up those brush strokes. You want to work dark to light. You want to work back to front, big brush to small brush, highlights last. If you do those things, I really think you're going to pull off a fantastic water painting, and really any painting. So I had a lot of fun doing this. I'm super excited to finish this painting and post it on my Instagram for you guys to see. Make sure you comment below this video what kind of water you're working on, what's your favorite part of painting water, and let me know if you used complements and didn't just paint blue water. Okay, we'll see you next time.